Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues, as I stated when we considered the Mayor's draft budget on the 24th of January, from a financial perspective, Sadiq Khan is now 3/4 of the way through his term. His record is deeply unimpressive. It's very long on bragging, boasting, virtue signalling, PR and spin. It's also long on excuses, blame shifting and finger pointing, but it's very short on delivery. On every area for which he is directly responsible, Sadiq Khan is falling short. He's simply not building enough affordable homes, despite receiving what he himself hailed as a record-breaking funding settlement from government at the beginning of his administration. Under his leadership, Transport for London have run up a massive budget deficit, passenger numbers have plummeted across the network, and major infrastructure projects have been extensively delayed or cancelled altogether. Crossrail is becoming a totemic symbol of his administration. It's been overseen with almost staggering complacency and incompetence, and is now vastly over budget and delayed to an unspecified point in the future, as we heard again this morning. Crime, and particularly violent crime, continues to be the #1 priority and concern for Londoners, and understandably so. The Mayor has demonstrably failed to get a grip of it, especially with regard to knife crime. Having initially dismissed the idea of imitating the successful approach made in Scotland, he belatedly announced that a new violence reduction unit modelled on the Scottish approach would be the answer. Expectations were very high as to which expert would lead this potentially transformative unit. So you can imagine the disappointment to discover that it will be headed up by yet another Labour Party flunky mate of the Mayor, appointed after a process that, as was brilliantly exposed by the Assembly's Police and Crime Committee, appears to have been as transparent as a bucket of mud. The Mayor's other major approach to the issue of his failure to control violent crime is to blame other people for it. Chiefly the government. Ever since it became obvious that he'd lost control of the streets, he's been blaming budget cuts. He constantly attributes his failure to get a grip on the issue of violent crime to falling police numbers brought about by budget cuts and so-called austerity. Of course, he does not mention the reasons for this so-called austerity. He does not acknowledge that the last Labour government, of which he was a member, increased the annual deficit from £6 billion per year when they took office to £167 billion a year when they were finally booted out. Nor does he mention that the Conservative government, both this last year and this, have given him the ability to raise more money through the precept in order to pay for policing. Now, however, whilst we do not agree with the Mayor's rhetoric, we do agree, and we have consistently agreed, that there needs to be more funding for the Metropolitan Police. For this budget, as I acknowledged last month, there's been little increase in government funding, although the government has allowed the Mayor to significantly increase the precept, provided it is hypothecated for policing. And the Mayor, along with all police and crime commissioners around the country, has opted to take advantage of that, and we do not oppose it. Similarly, we continue to support the Mayor's position on the National and International Capital Cities grant, and believe the Home Office needs to correct the historic underfunding of the duties carried out by the Met in recognition of London's capital city status. As stated earlier, the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime have consistently attributed their failure to get a grip on violent crime to cuts in police funding and falling police numbers. The Mayor has consistently asserted that he's doing everything in his power to maintain police officer numbers, and we heard some of that again this morning. However, this is demonstrably not true. He could and should go further. The Mayor, it's important to note, has full discretion over a budget that this year has increased to £18.45 billion and can move money around the GLA family. He has endlessly stated that keeping Londoners safe is his #1 priority, and this is directly linked to the number of officers that the Met has. In his final budget, he's diverted additional funding from the higher-than-expected business rates receipt in order to fulfil last year's promise to pay for an additional 1,000 police officers. And he also claims that his budget will deliver a further 300 officers on top of the 1,000 he announced last year. This remains to be seen, but if delivered, of course, we will welcome it. However, as we stated last month, we believe the Mayor could and should do more. Now, ultimately, colleagues, budgets are about choices. Sadiq Khan has chosen to increase the number of bureaucrats at City Hall by over a third at taxpayers' expense. Sadiq Khan has chosen to increase PR budgets by millions of pounds at taxpayers' expense. Sadiq Khan has chosen to increase trade union facility time at Transport for London by a staggering 125% at taxpayers' expense. Sadiq Khan has chosen to throw away £13 million in a virtue signalling approach to advertising on the TfL network at taxpayers' expense. Sadiq Khan has chosen to continue to fund free travel for people who don't work for TfL at taxpayers' expense. Sadiq Khan has chosen to throw millions of pounds at London and partners at taxpayers' expense. Sadiq Khan has chosen to do all of these things and others instead of putting the money into policing. These are all things that he did not have to do, but are choices that he has made. But even at this late hour, he and Assembly colleagues have other choices available. Chiefly, you could choose to accept our budget amendment. Now, it was very interesting during the exchanges that we had this morning that the Mayor and the Labour group spent more time talking about our amendment than his own budget. In his opening speech this morning, the Mayor made a number of claims about our amendment which were entirely untrue. He claimed, for instance, that we would slash money to the Notting Hill Carnival. Well, the Notting Hill Carnival was not mentioned once in our budget amendment. He said that we propose to slash MOPAC's budget. This is completely untrue. In fact, it is the reverse of the truth, because, of course, we are going to increase MOPAC's budget. He said that we will reduce funding for delivery of affordable housing. Again, totally untrue. And he said that we would cut London Pride and Diwali in the square. 100% untrue. As with last month, our amendment would move funds around the GLA family and would provide for an additional 1,378 police officers. It will protect funding for the London Fire Brigade and would freeze the non-policing component of the GLA precept, thus providing a real terms tax cut for Londoners. At a time when London has an underperforming mayor and a spiralling crime problem, we believe that this better reflects London priorities. And with that, Chairman, I move the Conservative budget amendment.
Thank you very much.